Learn how to create content without the burnout. I chatted with Auds Lecker, who is a B2B content marketer and a consultant with influencers, and she teaches creators how to create content without the burnout. In this episode, you'll learn how to change your mindset in content creation, identify your mission as a creator, choose content that your audience cares about, accomplish your business goals through content creation, and last but probably first, because it's the most important, delegate to the experts when you need to. In the comments, right down there, tell me what aspect of content creation drives you bonkers and burns you out like crazy. My interview with Auds is coming up next, so stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Tiny Marketing. I'm Sarah Noel Block and I teach small marketing departments that are tired of feeling overwhelmed and under-resourced how to build and manage an effective and efficient marketing strategy that works for them. You get expert marketing advice from someone who's been there, done that. Get ready, it's time to dig in. Thank you so much for joining me today. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. My name is Audrey Lecker, but I go by Odds, and I am a content marketer for a B2B startup. And on the side, I work with content creators, helping them build brands and marketing strategies that aren't going to burn them out.
Okay. I need to know more. What do you mean by content creators?
So we're kind of entering into, I mean, we've been in the creator economy, right? But I feel like the 2020s are the decade of the creator, where it's
Mhm.
people who are multi talented, who maybe originally would have gone to Hollywood or New York to like get signed with a label or a studio or whatever. But now they're building their own brands and their own businesses completely online. There's no need for all of those other industries anymore. And so the creator is somebody who, say, like a beauty guru, right? Who's just
Mhm.
making their own content and then maybe ends up building their own makeup line and having their own TV show. So it's like spanning multiple types and formats of content, but it's all online. And that's the future of what creators are. So I'm here to help people make that happen.
Well, I completely agree with you. That's the direction that it's going. And I feel like a lot of brands are going to start reaching out to them more than they were in the past. So
Yeah.
before we get into the meat of it, and the topic we're talking about today is how to not burn yourself out when you're a content creator. But before we do that, help me make my playlist. I'm making a happy songs playlist. And you've already told me it's dark, and I'm dying to know what it is.
It's probably not a very famous song. I just kind of randomly found it, but it's called Lie to Me by Vera Blue. And I'm not even that familiar with her other stuff. I think it must have just been on like a random playlist I was listening to, but this is one of those songs that I have like run into the ground. I've listened to it over and over and over again for so long the last several months.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like in high school, I was always the last of my friends to be like, "Oh, I'm sick of that song. I'll never be sick of that song."
Right.
I just kind of put it on repeat.
I definitely was that person in high school where I was like, that's overplayed. But at the same time, I would have the same CD in my car forever. So I'm a
No one
total
needed to
hypocrite.
know that though.
I'm very open and authentic about my own hypocrisies.
That works perfectly. All right, let's get into the meat of it. So, content creators, they make their money by creating content.
Mhm.
So, how do they do this without burning themselves out?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily be pointing this advice at somebody who, say, gets all of their income from just like YouTube content or like your YouTube ad revenue, because for that, you do kind of have to constantly be posting. This is more for the creator that is trying to build a brand for themselves, that doesn't just want that YouTube ad revenue, wants to create multiple revenue streams for themselves. So the way that you do that is you build a really solid marketing strategy. So this is branding, positioning, who you are, like what your mission statement is and your values and what you want to be spending your time doing. And so once you kind of have all of those factors in place, you can just kind of let go of the outcome. I like to think of it in terms of let's assume I'm already famous. Like assume I'm already there at some point. So let's just get that out of the way. It's going to happen. All of our dreams are going to come true, right?
The stars are aligned, it's happening.
Exactly. So we're wildly famous, okay, and we've got multiple revenue streams, whatever. What then? I feel like a lot of times people, myself included, get to this point where it's like, okay, either I've achieved the goal I set out to do, or I'm very close to it, or I'm on my way to it, but I'm still not very happy. And
Mhm.
I'm burned out, and I've just been like burning the candle at both ends. And so, what I'm trying to do with the work that I'm doing with creators is, let's think into the future. Let's look into the future. You're already famous, but what do you want to be doing? Like, you've got all the money in the world. What do you want to spend it on? Because money isn't going to make you happy. Fame isn't going to make you happy. But I feel like doing good, like serving this mission and being true to yourself and your authentic self, is what's going
Mhm.
to kind of keep you maybe not perfectly content, but you'll be in a better spot than if you were only seeking, like, I'm just going to do whatever I can to like get to this goal of fame and money or whatever. So by assuming that that's already going to happen and thinking through like mission. So what is your mission? What is it, if you had all the money in the world, all the fame in the world, and you could fix one problem, like what's the soapbox that you're standing on top of? How are you going to serve people? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So we build out that framework, and there's about 4 different sides to like the little box that I've created, which we can get into later if we want. But build out that framework for yourself now, when you only have 50 followers, when you only have 200. I only have like 200. So, I've built bigger audiences for bigger companies, but not for myself, because it's a lot of effort. And that's kind of where
Yeah.
all this comes from. Was I actually did try to go out on my own, build my own audience, and it burned me the heck out. I was a little bit already burned out from corporate life, but I found that even though I'm a creative myself and I love creating content and all kinds of different content, and I'm always thinking of ideas and strategy, like content strategies and things, when it came down to actually having to do the work for myself, I was so tired and I was overwhelmed by all of the options for ideas. So that's kind of where this framework came out of. I was like, I need to simplify this just for myself and make sure that I know exactly what kind of content I'm going to create, because the moments of inspiration or energy for me that would
Mhm.
come, especially in a place that like literal burnout where you just have very little energy in general,
Yeah.
there are very few times when I do have the energy, or did. I feel like it's coming back now finally, but it's over the last year or so. There were very few times when I actually had the energy to make anything. So I had to make sure that those times counted towards my long-term goals. And so that's where that framework comes in. And that's what I'm trying to teach creators to do, because the creators that I've talked to, and I've also just been there myself as a creator, is there are so many different options. Do I hop on all of these trends? This thing seems to be trending. Do I need to do this? And it's like constant go, 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 which is very typical of like Hollywood and the
Yeah,
entertainment industry and
it's
everything.
the creative industry.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that's not how our creativity works. Our creativity doesn't really work on a deadline. It can't thrive in an environment where you're constantly having to go. Like you have like a well of creativity, right? But what happens at some point, it's going to go dry, if you
Yeah.
just keep digging it up.
And yeah, you lose that spark when you're burnt out. I've been there. So I want to talk more about this framework
Yeah.
because that's exactly how I work too. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. Back in 2015, I think it was, I built out a pretty popular blog around marketing, and I got pregnant with my second son. And I was sick for 9 months. I was so
Oh, yeah.
sick. And
Oh,
I
man.
just got so burnt out that I had built this pretty big community and I just let it die.
Oh, man.
I lost my will for it. I was throwing up for 9 months. I
Oh,
didn't have
my
the
God.
energy for it. It took me probably 4 years to be able to get back to a place where I had the capacity to build up another community. I mean, this is all on the side because I was working corporate that whole time. It was hard, especially when you worked
Yeah.
so hard to build that community and then you get burnt out and you're just like, I'm done now."
Oh, my God. I can't imagine being sick for 9 months. That's awful.
Oh, it sucked. I was like, it was my second son. I wasn't
Yeah.
sick at all with my first. I was like, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah. That happened to one of my friends with her first. So I'm
Yeah, so
like,
she
man,
was
I don't
like,
know how you would
well,
ever want
get
another
this,
one.
right? I wouldn't.
Maybe that's why the universe was like, you're going to have
Yeah.
multiple. So we'll make it easy on the first one.
Oh, did she? Did she have multiples?
She did. Well, not the first one, but I know that she has
Yeah.
other kids now. Yeah.
Well, that was the universe saying you're done now. You're done. Okay. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to say that point that I feel the burnout. I've been there before and I had to start all over again when I built
Yeah.
Tiny Marketing. And two, the way I was able to rebuild Tiny Marketing after I had given up the other thing was through frameworks. Having those
Mm,
frameworks in place gave me a structure that I was able to follow, and it felt a lot less overwhelming, even though I was building it on the side of
right.
working full time. So tell me about your framework.
Yeah, so my framework, and I feel like most frameworks are coming from the same place and they generally are hitting the same areas. Mine just happens to be a box because I remember constantly thinking about the phrase like think outside the box. And I was like, but what if I built my own box and I never had to go outside of it? Wouldn't that be easier?
What if my box was more like an octagon and it could be whatever I want?
Exactly. And then I thought, because one thing I've really been trying to connect with even more over the last few years, especially during the pandemic, like that's really kind of what kicked off this whole transformation for me internally, is this focus on connecting back to my inner child because my inner child was crazy creative and constantly coming up with stories and ideas and little songs. And she was like an adorable little weirdo, right? And I feel like we've all been that. And then at some point we lose touch with that inner child, just because of school and college and, getting a job and having to pay bills and all of that stuff. And so during the pandemic, I really started making an effort to bring more rest and more play into my life and connecting with that weirdo kid. So anything that's kind of a little bit childlike really
Mhm.
sends me. And so once I was thinking of the box idea, I was like, oh my God, what if it was a sandbox, which is why I call it the sandbox method, because the concept that I came up with is like, all right, let's make our own box and then we can play inside of it because you've already built all four walls that you need. And instead of making you feel like you have to just stick to all of this stuff, let's just keep it a little bit more playful so that it's not a hard and fast rule necessarily. It's
Mhm.
just something you can play in because sometimes sand gets outside of the box. But like as long as you're pretty much staying within your same four walls, then you should be good to go. And so that is where the kind of the bones of this framework came out of. So it's got four walls. And there's a couple other concepts that are involved in it, but I'm going to keep it simple today, where it's got like one wall is just about you and kind of who you are, how you would describe yourself, just like bullet points, like words. Like weirdo is literally one of my words that's on that
So
side.
hold on, real quick question. Are
Mhm.
these words that are like for your brand, like brand words that represent you?
Sort of. I think eventually you would get it to this formalized place of like the only thing that's on here are like brand approved words, especially if you're scaling and you have a team around you. I'm just kind of keeping it fast and loose right now, where it's
Mhm.
like almost like crayon, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
all right, weirdo. Like somebody I was talking to on TikTok, she's an author, but she also is like a huge New Yorker, like is obsessed with New York. So I would put New Yorker for her. So it's kind of like who you are. And then another way I've described it is when you're thinking about, because I've done like a lot of meditation and stuff through all of like the meditation and therapy and like reconnecting to my inner child and stuff, I use the term best self or like higher self a lot now.
Mhm.
I guess this is like my transformation into a hippie, I suppose.
You know what? I feel you and your energy and everything you're
Oh,
about, and
good.
I love it.
I'm glad it's resonating. So, for the you side of the wall of the sandbox, the way I've been describing it is when you imagine your higher self or like your best self, how do you describe that person? And sometimes it is easier to think about it in terms of like the third person. Because I found through my conversations with various types of creators, everybody has a really hard time defining just those 3 to 5 bullet points about themselves.
Yeah, it's hard to see yourself from an outside perspective.
Yeah, so once you put it into third person, because what's been interesting to me, I think this is gonna sound so pretentious. I promise. I'm very aware of how it sounds.
Now I'm dying to know what you're gonna say.
But like when you're kind of thinking about your best self or your higher self and like describing that person, What I've found has been happening is you think that that's me 10 years from now or like 20 years from now. This is who I want to be. Like that could even be another way to frame it. It's like this is who I want to be in, as like an old lady or whatever. I say old lady because I literally want to be like the old lady witch down the street who like teaches yoga. That's who I want to be. Like the old
Oh,
hippie.
I love it.
But then once you've kind of written that down, like if you've journaled about it, you start to realize like that's actually you right now. You might not be like, I'm definitely not a yogi yet, or like a
Or a
perfectly
witch
meditative,
yet.
right? Or a witchy vibe, not like being a witch sounds really hard. So I feel like,
There's a lot involved and I'm not committing to that,
yeah, it's
but
like,
I'd like to be a little scary and really
yeah,
aligned
like
with the
long
earth.
hair. And I want to live in like a 1900s house in the Pacific Northwest. Like
If
that's,
there were ghosts involved, I'd be happy to.
yes, that's what I want. But yeah, this is the part that sounds pretentious is like you find that you're kind of already that, or
Mhm.
you're at least on your way.
You're the
And I
baby
just,
version of that.
yeah. And I don't know about you, but I'm really hard on myself for like
Yeah.
not being perfect yet. And once I started thinking about those things and what my best self is, I'm like, oh, I do have those things already. It's not perfect, but we're humans. We're never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
But that's the you column. It's like, who's your best self? Who's your most fabulous? I like to be like a Disney villain in my future. That's the kind of
Which
witch.
one? Ursula is what I'm picturing right now with the witchy
Ooh,
vibe.
that's a good one. I was thinking Maleficent, or who's the one who's in Snow White? Like the evil. Does she have a name?
I don't know. I think she's just the evil stepmother.
Yeah.
Or is she Maleficent?
No,
Or is that
Maleficent's from Sleeping Beauty, right?
yeah, you're
So
right.
Snow White, she might not have a name actually. Side note, this is such an ADHD moment. There's like a whole YouTube channel by this guy about like queer representation in all kinds of different media.
Mhm.
And he does this incredible video on Disney villains and how they're based off of queer icons. But then he has this whole section about that particular villain where if you think back, and he's right, he's like, she is having the time of her life because she's very kind of staid and like put together at the very beginning. And then by the time that she's transformed herself into
Yeah.
like that little old lady with the apple, she's cackling and like making all these noises. And I'm like, he's right. I never realized that. She's having a blast. the
She's
whole time.
happy now being her authentic evil self.
Yes. So dig down deep and find that Disney villain inside of you and then write down the bullets.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, like what would make you cackle evilly? That's kind of what we're trying to hit. So that's just you, and then I'll speed through the others, but like on the other side of the box after you, we've got them, which is just your audience. So that's the demographics of your audience, as well as kind of what their key challenges are, their key pain points, and it should be related to things you can help with because everybody's got pain points like, DoorDash is too expensive, but like,
Yeah.
are you a DoorDash competitor? Then don't bother
Yeah.
writing that down.
Yeah. Whenever I talk to my people about like content themes, it's always like their problems and your solutions, that Venn diagram, whatever's in the
Yeah,
middle, that's the sweet spot.
exactly. And so that's what we want going on in the them side. And then the other two we've got is your mission. So this is the third wall, and mission can be both short term, so like, or smaller, like it could literally be as small as a call to action. So I really want to be pushing this particular lead magnet right now because I want to grow my
Mhm.
email list. Or it could be something a little bit bigger, which is like the author I'd talked to, she obviously has a book coming out and wants people to go buy her book. So that's a nice short term one. But on top of that, I want people to think about what their long term mission is. So, this is the one where it's like, I think I mentioned a soapbox earlier. What is the thing that kind of keeps you up at night sometimes? What is the long term issue that if you could wave your magic wand and fix, or what you want to directly have an impact on? What is that mission? So, for me, it's gotten very specific over the last year or so. Like, it might start out vague and then it just grows more and more specific, which is ideal. But for me, like and this has been going on for years where I literally will get up on this soapbox all the time about just diversity in media. And it used to be, it's definitely getting way better now. But at the time, like when I was working in Hollywood, everything was so white. And all the development people that I was talking to literally were afraid to put non-white people in major roles and stuff. And it was super, super frustrating because I'm like, how
Yeah.
can you expect anything to change if all of our media looks exactly the same. And then now in recent years, it's gotten to the point where, yes, we're seeing more diversity. We also have more access to more global content, which is awesome. And so I'm so excited for the future of content and media to be able to see these diverse stories all across the globe. And I know that there are people who are in, like, I used to run a YouTube channel for like music marketing, and there was this one kid who I had messaged back and forth with several times over the years who lives in a really small town in India. Like, it's a nice town, but his parents obviously don't want him to be a musician, but he's
Yeah.
an incredible musician. But he also didn't have any friends locally that were musicians. So he had nobody to collaborate with
No
or
community.
share. Yeah, there's no community. But because now of the internet, he was able to grow and build and find communities online. And that's how he found me, was through YouTube. And he's an incredible musician, incredible voice. And like, these are the creators that I want to hear from, who you normally never would have heard from because of just their location or their circumstances.
Yeah.
So that's my mission, is I really want to make sure that these creators are getting seen all over the world because they have a voice and I want to hear it.
That is a
So,
beautiful mission.
oh, thank you. So everybody can have one.
To have their own mission.
And
You're
you get
welcome.
a mission, and you get a mission. Oh yeah. So that's what I mean by like the bigger mission, like the impact that you want to have, and then all the way down to like, what's your CTA for this thing? Because my CTA can't just be go give a voice to millions of people.
Too broad.
Yeah, a little too broad.
A
Yeah,
little too broad.
we want some actionable steps here. And then the last wall is love. And this one, and I switched out this wall a couple times while developing this framework, but this is kind of what I landed on, because the love section is all about, obviously, love. And it's also kind of about you as well, but maybe some other stuff. This one is the hardest one to describe because it's both things you love to do, things you love to make, things you love to look at, things you love to talk about. And then it's also a way to minimize your effort spent on things you don't love. So when I filled mine out, for example, like, I had this long list of like, I love anime, I love music videos, I love like Weird Al Yankovic, like all this stuff, that as you start to kind of fill it out, you kind of it should feel like you, like this box should feel exactly like you. And what I noticed was the things that weren't on there, which was a lot of the stuff that I had been doing. And I realized that that was kind of contributing to my burnout, which was like,
Hmm.
for example, I do like editing, like video editing and that sort of thing. And right now, since it's just me, I'm the only one editing all of my stuff. And I
Yeah.
realized that obviously it wasn't a conscious decision to like, I'm not going to put it on here. I thought I did kind of love it. But when I looked through my list, I was like, oh, it's interesting that that's not on there since I seem to be doing that all the
Yeah. Like your
time.
subconscious was like, no, you don't love it. You do
Yeah.
it though.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought I had to do it, but then when I sat down and thought about it, I was like, "Oh my god, I have access to Fiverr and these incredible editors that are so cheap. Why not let us outsource as well?"
Yeah.
Aside from the bigger companies. So like, I realized that the things that weren't on that list were stuff I needed to figure out a way to delegate as soon as possible. Like as soon as I have the budget for it, or as soon as
Mhm.
I have the contacts who can take that on, then that needs to go, because that was contributing to my burnout and my overwhelm. So love is interesting because it's both kind of the content that you're going to end up making. Like if you love Renaissance art, then let's find a way to make sure that that is feeding into your content. But it's also a way to figure out what you shouldn't be spending your time on. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be editing anytime soon, because I
Yeah.
have to, but it does mean that that's now a priority for me to outsource as soon as I can.
Yeah. It becomes like it's a goal on your list. I'm going to be outsourcing this. This is something I love. That makes
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah. So that's the box. And then the ideal, it's kind of like when you mentioned with the Venn diagram, it basically is that with just 4 sides. So as long as you're hitting 2 or more sides of that box within it with your content, then you should be good to go. And so that's where you build out your box. And then now you're set up to, if you are burned out already, or if you just don't have time, like a lot of people are doing this as a side hustle, so that when you do have the time, you are using it the most effective way possible. Just make sure that it's in your box.
So it helps you become laser focused on what you need to do. So you
Exactly.
can spend your energy doing just the things that you love that will drive your mission.
Exactly.
Okay, good. I got it.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me how people can, one, find you online and two, work with you?
Sure. So for working with me, you can just hit me up honestly on Instagram. That's also where you can find me. So I'm at Auds Lecker. I'm on Instagram and TikTok under at Auds Lecker. I'm also on YouTube under Auds Lecker. And I'm also on Twitch where currently I'm only streaming video game stuff, but that's under Odds with three S's and an underscore because I couldn't get what I wanted.
It happens.
Yeah. But so eventually I'll be doing some more content on Twitch that's more live stream, like biz chat stuff. But hit me up on, I would say Instagram or TikTok are the ones that I check the most. And then, of course, you can also go to my website, which is Tiger Team Studio, and that is tigerteamstud.io.
Yes, all of her information will be in the description and the show notes page. So
Yeah.
you'll be able to find her through that too.
Yeah, and I've got a worksheet up there on Tiger Team Studio as well that you can download that includes all four walls of the
Of the
box.
sandbox.
Yeah, so that you can
Awesome.
play.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. This was really fun.
I did have fun too. All right, I'll see you next time.
All right, bye.
Bye. There you have it. Odds broke down her framework that helps content creators do what they love while avoiding the burnout. Hit that subscribe button and like this video so more people just like you can watch this video. Get it up in the algs. And don't forget to comment and tell me right down there what burns you out the most about content creation. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining Tiny Marketing. I help tiny marketing departments create consistent content that builds trust with their audience. Book done for you content marketing at sarahnoelblock.com. Don't forget to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast app. And if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, make sure to hit the subscribe or follow button. See you next time, friends.